Hey everybody, it's Eric live alongside Rod with our final regular season post-game show presented by Fanduel Sportsbook. The Michigan game, obviously Fanduel is your go-to source for betting on sports you love to watch, whether it's a parlay or you just want to stick to the money line. You'll find all the odds you need on the Fanduel app. Download it today. You can get started right away. Also, make sure you head on over to our Fanduel Player of the Game poll at Slido, that's SLIDO.com, hashtag TIFFNOTS, that's TFFINOTS. There you can vote for the Michigan State Player of the Game. Okay, Rod. So unlike the first game between these two teams, I really feel like this game had the chippiness you sort of expect from this rivalry. First 10 minutes of the game were featured a technical foul from Jeremy Fears, technical foul from Adaimara, then a technical foul from Trey McKinney. And after that, I think the game kind of gets settled in a little bit. Both teams overall struggled to defend for most of the game. I felt like, Michigan went on a run early, got the lead up to 9, and before half, and it sort of felt a little bit like that game in East Lansing, but Michigan State responded. They ended up taking the lead briefly in the end of the first half. Then right before the halftime, Michigan scored to go up 42-41 at halftime. Again, in the second half, Michigan State took a lead. They were up 4 points behind, I think it was an 8-0 run. And then Michigan responded with a run of their own, and then, mostly behind 3-point shooting. And just, ultimately a few untimely turnovers late in the second half, some missed shots of, open looks that they just didn't finish off. And so Michigan ends up cruising into the win over the last few minutes, making their free throws. They were fantastic at the free foul line just all night. So Michigan ends up finishing the historic regular season with going 19-1. Michigan State falls to 25-6 overall, 15-5 in the Big Ten. Spartans are probably still a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. They won't play until Friday evening in Chicago. I think is a 3 seed as we're recording. I know they
3 seed. Nebraska's about to win.
Okay, so the Nebraska is going to pull it off.
So despite Iowa, UCLA.
Yeah, so they'll get the UCLA bracket. We don't know if it'll be UCLA. Obviously, the way the Big Ten tournament goes, it's anyone's guess. So it'll be the final game on Friday night. So look at wait the whole time. I don't know. I guess what's your takeaway from the game just in general?
I'm not. Look. Nobody likes to lose to these assholes. We know that. And we haven't had to experience it very often over the last 30 years, truthfully. So when it does happen, I understand being irritated about it. I get it. I did not think Michigan State played badly today. There were certain things they didn't do well enough, and it cost them. We'll get into that. But on balance, I thought they played a much better game than the one at Breslin. There's only a 2-point difference in the final margin, but Michigan State played good basketball pretty much for 40 minutes in this one.
Yeah.
That final score line is a little bit flattering to Michigan. In my view, that felt more like a 2-possession game, say 4 to 6 points, how it felt.
Right.
I suppose reasonable minds can differ, but they'd be wrong if they don't agree with me. But honestly, it did not feel like a double-digit loss. It really didn't. And I thought they displayed great resiliency. They played with toughness. They played with physicality. Sometimes not quite enough to counter what Michigan threw at them. We'll get into that, but I'm not bothered really by the outcome, because I think 2 things above all else were the keys to this loss. One of them, Michigan State absolutely can control. The other one, not as much. The bit they can control, which I'm disappointed with, and it was one of our keys, is the rebounding.
Right.
They did not win forget dominating. They didn't win the rebounding battle. And Michigan's a good rebounding team, but you got to be better than Michigan State was. And it was very competitive. I'm not saying Michigan State was lazy or weak or uninterested or not physical, but the bottom line is, there's a term they use in soccer where they call winning a duel. And what that means is when it's 2 guys that are physically on each other. So it can be on a ball in the air where they're both trying to win a header. Or it can be when one guy is, right on the player with the ball and they're physically going at it. Winning the duel means you get advantage in that play. You win the ball. And I didn't think Michigan State won enough duels around the rim on the glass.
Yeah.
They didn't get smoked, but they didn't win it. And we said it in the keys, like it's hard to envision a Michigan State win in this game that doesn't include them winning the rebounding battle. And they didn't. And so they didn't. Right. So that's the part that they can control. And if you're disappointed in anything, I think it's that. The part you can't always control, or at least not entirely, was the 3-point shooting.
Right.
Michigan was out of their minds. I mean, Lendeborg,
yeah.
He's a 32% shooter on the year. So he's not horrific, but he's not great. Not even good. And he goes 5 for 6. I mean, that's just one of those things. On the other side, Michigan State had a very strong first half shooting the 3 and then couldn't duplicate that in the second. And it cost them. You know, I think you put those two things together, that's your ball game.
Mm-hmm.
Because Michigan State did a lot of other things that they needed to do to win. I thought they were pretty damn good around the rim offensively, you know, from 2.
Yep.
Great job minimizing turnovers. And, you know, again, I think defensively, I don't have a problem with giving up 3-point shots. It's just one of those things. They hit them. And I don't mean that it's entirely luck, but it is to some degree. And we've said the same thing in games where Michigan State's had performances like that, where they've shot 50%.
Exactly.
It's like, well, that's not really who they are, but every once in a while you'll have a day like that.
Well, you end up 35% shooting. You're sometimes 20 and sometimes 45, right? I mean, that's just
today. Well, you hope there are teams that are more consistently, that don't have the high variance, you know, that are more consistently. And I think Michigan State, for the most part this year, as a 3-point shooting team, has actually been reasonably consistent. They've had very occasional spectacular games and very occasional horrific games. Not a lot. But sometimes it happens.
Yep.
And so I think that was one of the big factors. And again, the other one was rebounding. I'm more upset about the rebounding. But overall, look, we talked about it in the preview, and I'm honestly, I hate losing to these assholes. As I said, I'll say it again. I'll say it to infinity. But has there ever been a Michigan State game where, particularly where both teams are good, and there haven't been a lot of those over the years because Michigan, quite frankly, hasn't held up their end very often.
Yeah, right.
But when they have, has there ever been one that felt like there was less at stake? I mean,
no,
honestly, not. Yeah. Right?
Right.
So to me, the big thing in this was what I said at the point that they lost to Wisconsin, I think, where that was the definitive, you know, death blow to any realistic Big Ten title chances, which is, okay, at this point in the season, when the Big Ten title is off the table, then it's about getting to somewhere near your best in time for March. I don't know if Michigan State's somewhere near their best, but they're not that far off it.
Yeah.
In my view. This one, you know, you can put the Rutgers game aside, weird ending, and they didn't play great for 25 minutes of that one anyway. But, you know, you look at the 2 games in Indiana where I thought on balance they played pretty damn well. You know, UCLA, they did some very good things. You got an Ohio State game and a Rutgers game that weren't great in there. But I think this one, at least for me, I come away from it feeling okay about where Michigan State is heading into the tournament. I really do.
I agree. I mean, I like the trajectory. It's not maybe as steep as you'd like as far as improving. And there are definitely things that you feel like they got to sort of get cleaned up before they start. And, you know, we're right about there.
One thing that is an issue for this team, and it's something that I think I mentioned recently. I had a debate about this on the Spartan Mag board relative to Kurtang, but it really applies to everybody on this team not named Jeremy Fears and Carson Cooper, I guess. Consistency. Like Jackson Kohler had a great game today.
Yep.
In many ways. I mean, really played well. But they didn't get enough out of Cohen. They got 2 big threes out of Kurtang, and then he went quiet.
Yep.
Jordan Scott didn't really play very well today. Second game in a row, I think.
Yep. Word had trouble.
Yeah. So they're not, even on an individual level, you're not seeing that consistency that makes, and even with Jackson, I mean, that's 2 straight really good games for Jackson. That's great to see. But I got to see more than that before I believe, okay, he's found that November, December, early January form that he had where you could count every game on, if not a double-double, damn near.
Mm-hmm.
And, that would be a big development because I don't think Michigan State can go on a deep run if they don't get that kind of Jacks. So the fact that he played well again in this one, that's encouraging, but he's got to keep doing it. And then they got to get, Cohen coming off a huge game, right? Well, what do we get?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, Kerr was fantastic in the games in Indiana. He didn't do much of anything against Rutgers. And then today hit 2 big threes.
Mm-hmm. And
you felt like, okay, maybe he's going to end up impacting this game the same way he did those others, and then not much.
Yeah.
So it's, that's been the problem for a while with this team, is that you really can't count on anybody game in, game out outside of Jeremy and Coop. Hopefully Jax is ready. I have more faith in Jax having found his level than any of the other guys I mentioned when they've had occasional hot streaks. Just because he's done it on a consistent basis at some point this season. And he's a senior and all of that. But but overall, in a macro sense, I'm not that bummed out. Again, probably as much as anything because it just felt like the result really didn't matter very much in terms of what Michigan State does next. For pride, it does, and you never want to lose to them. But the fact that they lost this game, it's kind of a shoulder shrug in terms of Michigan State's position.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could,
and I would argue by virtue of the way they played, I don't come away from this feeling like, man, they've really got to shore a ton of things up.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
I don't feel that way either. So it's a shoulder shrug.
Yeah.
I hate to say that about a Michigan game, but that's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, it was a game that was certainly winnable. It was a game that I thought compared to the first matchup. So the first matchup, I felt like, an A through F grade. I think Michigan State played like a D+ game, and then Michigan played not very well. I think they're like a C+ or B-. And this game, Michigan State was definitely in the B range, and I think Michigan was just a little bit better, maybe an A-.
Yeah, both. I agree with that. I think both teams were better. I'm not ready to give Michigan State a D+.
Well, I was saying the last game, the first matchup. I thought.
No, I'm not. I'm not ready to give them that because they did come back from 19 down. Let's not forget that, and took the lead. So, but it was not as the difference is this game, from beginning to end, over 40 minutes, was a fairly consistent level of play. Each team had runs, but this was not a game that ever felt like it was getting out of hand or even on the verge of it.
Yeah, I felt when it was 9 in the first half, it was on the edge, but right away Michigan State responded with.
Well, that was the thing. There was never a beat. Didn't they get it to 9 and then MSU got a transition dunk from Cooper?
Yeah, no. Yeah, I'm just saying. To 9,
so that's
okay.
Well, there was no time for that to settle.
Exactly.
In.
Yeah.
And that's improvement. That was and Michigan certainly, they shot the ball better than Michigan State in the first one too, but they really shot the ball well in this game. They kept their turnovers low enough.
Mm-hmm.
They outcompeted Michigan State on the glass. Michigan played a better game than they did in the first one as well. Both teams were better in this one. I don't think there's much debate about that.
Yeah. I feel like too, with Morrow going out with foul. I mean, Michigan is they're not nearly as good. I mean, it's an obvious statement with Morrow on the bench. And so getting him in foul trouble early, Michigan State was able to take advantage of that and really pull back in the game. And but when he came back, they really struggled. Whether it was a psychological thing, I mean, he definitely made a couple plays. He wasn't impactful offensively much, but it was pretty much on the defensive end that he just caused enough disruption that they weren't able to hit the twos in the second half when he was in. which
But
I think really
I want
bothered
to
him.
talk about that though, because for as much as people, and this even includes us, criticize officials, I give that officiating crew credit today because
Yeah, the game was getting close to out of control.
They nailed that son of a bitch. He's been getting away with bullshit all year long.
Yeah.
Not just against Michigan State, against everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
So
Northwestern
not
Martinelli
only the obvious ones, because I'm going to talk about one that maybe wasn't as obvious. The obvious ones, the push on Coop and then the grab at Jeremy, both deserve tees. No question.
Yep.
So that was good. But there was, before either of those plays, there was a Michigan challenge on a play where they were looking for a hook and hold.
Oh, right.
And they showed the replay, and it was the same shit we've seen all year long from that jackass. Looking for that call, trying to instigate for that call. And this crew didn't give it to him. And it was on a play. When I looked at it, my first glance was, man, I've seen him get a call on that same exact sequence probably 5 times this year, at least.
Yeah.
They didn't give it to him. I don't know whether Michigan State spent time working them or whether this crew was just ready for it, but they had Mara nailed.
Yeah.
And every team that sees Michigan from this point out ought to be talking about it from before the opening tap. They should be talking about it because you're right. It makes them a different team. And you know what? If Michigan wants to keep him on the floor and allow his impact to be fully seen, get him to stop with the cheap shit. You want to? This is what I said coming out of that first game and the aftermath. You want a Zapruder shit? Is that what we're going to get to? Okay, but understand that you're living in a glass house too. And so the call on Jeremy, absolutely the correct one.
Yep, for
He
sure.
shouldn't do it. I don't know what he's thinking. Thankfully, he reined it in after that. But that's inexcusable to do that. But I was glad to see the Mara stuff. I was glad to see them get Trey McKinney. This team does that. They work at margins. Mm-hmm. And if officials are going to let them get away with that shit, it takes a very good team and makes them not impossible to beat, but pretty close, if you're going to let them get away with that stuff. So I was really glad to see that, and I hope that's a sign of things to come, because that's how they should be officiated.
Sure. Yeah, definitely. Look, Michigan's really good. Yax is really good. He played a good game. There's no question he's going to be player of the year. And he played one of his better games. I mean, a recent note. So, hats off to Michigan, obviously, for that.
He made plays when they had to have them.
Yeah,
He made shots when they had to have them. It's something he has not done consistently. He did it today. So, okay, he rose to the occasion. If Michigan's going to live and die by Yaxel Lendeborg's 3-point shooting, I don't like their odds. But today he stepped up, and that, you know what? In big moments, in big games against tough opponents, that's what you need to have happen if you want to win games. So they got what they needed out of him. But again, that's not relying on him to be your 3-point sniper is not a recipe for success over the next month.
Yeah. Go ahead and make sure you vote in our FanDuel player of the game. We'll talk about that later. And let's go through the individual players here, Rod. We'll begin with Jackson Kohler, of course. He finishes with 23 points, 10 for 13 from the field, 2 for 4 from 3, hit his 1 free throw, 8 rebounds, 2 offensive, 3 assists, no turnovers, a block, played 33 minutes. I'm assuming he got the black eye sometime in practice, sometime between the last game and this one. Yeah. You can't ask for much more. And I love the fact that he was not unafraid of going in and attacking both Mara and whoever was on him. Really, he just really. This is the Kohler that we sort of envision may sometime emerge, where he's got all the footwork and he just could never finish. And today he was able to finish almost all the time, which was, to your point, can he consistently do that for the next 7, 8, 9 games, well, that'd be great. But at least tonight he showed that he's been getting better, certainly finishing. But today he was really good.
That's up there for the best games we've seen him play at Michigan State. Particularly because you've got a grade for the opposition and all that size and just the way they defend in the post. Jackson was tremendous. And if they get that Jax going forward, Michigan State's going to be a really tough out, really tough.
Yeah.
So I hats off to him, man. He stepped up.
Yeah. And especially, I think he missed his first 2 threes and then hit the next 2, because I think it's so, not perturbed. I mean, 2 of his misses were from 3. So that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Jeremy
exactly.
Fears.
He was whatever he was,
10 for 13,
8 for 9 on 2s.
Can't ask for much more from him.
Well, that's what I mean. And let's keep in mind, this is an elite 2-point defense they were facing. Elite. And Michigan State was, what were they? They were 23 for, well, they weren't quite as good as I thought. They were 23 for 47. It felt like they were better than that. But
they struggled down the end. I mean, that's where I think the game where the separation happened. They had a 1-2 possession. They came up empty a number of times, just some bad possessions. And
that's not on Jax. Jax was great.
No, he was good. So Jeremy Fears, 22 points, not super efficient, 5 for 13 from the field, 2 for 3 from 3, 10 for 12 from the free throw line, missed the front end of that 1-1, which kind of turned out to be a little bit big. That was an opportunity to get the lead down a little bit too later. 2 rebounds, 9 assists to 3 turnovers, and with 4 fouls, but played 37 minutes, almost the entire game, which you may have seen a little bit at the end where he's just kind of trying to do everything. And I don't know, but he had a good game aside. And once he sort of regained himself after that's dumb technical, he just, I worry though, of course, that's going to have some lingering effects, not on Cadeau, but on Jeremy going forward into the postseason, both in the Big Ten and the NCAA tournament, but we talked about it before.
He can control that.
You'd hope so. Yes.
I would be upset if I felt like he got called for one that clearly shouldn't have been called. Because then what that tells you is, this is under his control.
Right.
He's not getting bad reputational calls right now. So it's down to him. But look, I think that at times he was bothered by their length, or at least what he thought their length was.
Uh-huh.
And so he wasn't as efficient from 2. But in the second half, there were some moments where he looked very confident stepping into that mid-range and making them pay for drop coverage.
Yes.
And of course, he did hit a couple threes. So his recent uptick from there continued. Look, was it a perfect game from Jeremy? No, but I liked the way he played overall. I thought he did the things that you want your leader and your best player to do for the most part. So reasonably happy with him.
Yep, I agree. Next up is Jordan Scott, finished with 2 points, 1 for 7 from the field, missed all 3 of his 3-point attempts, some of them pretty badly. 2 rebounds, 1 of offensive, had an assist, a turnover, a couple blocks, a couple steals, played 33 minutes. I thought offensively he really struggled. He had that one where he stepped out of the bounds, which he's done a couple times recently. And I feel this is something that plagues Michigan State in general. They always seem to have the problem with that. But anyway, defensively, he was okay. I think it was just because he was very disruptive like he usually is. And so a better game that he had was against Ohio State or was it Rutgers that he really struggled on both ends. This time I thought he was better, at least on the defensive end.
He did make some impactful defensive plays. I agree with that. But they need more from him offensively than they got in this game.
Yep.
You need him because the fact is, it's not like he was just missing those. I mean, they were bad misses.
Yes.
Really bad. So, it's funny. We had somebody ask, is he hitting the freshman wall? I don't think he is. I just think he's had a couple of bad games.
Yep. I think so
but
too.
They need him. If he's going to play that many minutes, they need more offensive production out of him than they got tonight.
And then Carson Cooper, who was really good. I mean, 19 points, 8 for 14 from the field. So he's also like Kohler, very efficient. 3 for 4 from the line, 6 rebounds, half of those offensive, a couple of assists, a couple of turnovers, a steal, played 29 minutes. I mean, I guess you could argue that there are times when Yaxel hit some stuff and he just couldn't get out to him. But the guy also was sort of just he reminds me of what Teng was in Indiana, just the kind of guy you just couldn't miss.
Yeah, I think Coop played a reasonable defensive game in this one. That's just, and look, if that guy is going to rise up and take a three, on balance, let him. He's a 32% shooter. That's not a bad equation for Michigan State. He just happened to hit him. I thought Coop played very well. I thought, just like Jax, I thought he was aggressive and in the post, looking to score, not backing down. I think in total, you put the games that he and Jax had together against that opponent, and there was a lot of good.
Yep.
Neither one of them was quite good enough on the glass. That's where my critique would be. But again, it's tough competition. But so what? You want to win championships, you're going to have to beat tough competition. So that would be where I'd get after him a little bit, but no complaints about the way they played offensively or even really defensively. I didn't have major problems with them.
Right. Well, that brings us to Cone Carr. And, so you get 23 from Kohler, good game, 19 from Cooper, very good game. You get 22 from Fierce, is pretty good game. And then you have 6 from Carr, which you don't need a zillion points from him, but 3 for 8 from the field, miss all threes, 7 rebounds, 1 of them offensive, no assists, no turnovers, no blocks, no steals, play 32 minutes. He was just not as impactful as he needs to be. I also think, just my wife from watching, for as inconsistent as his 3-point shot is, let's say, he should follow every one of his 3-point shots. Like, I know you want to try and just shoot it, like, assuming you're going to make it, but you should, in some ways, you should just be prepared that maybe it doesn't go in. I don't know. That's just me. He's just,
I can't fault his effort because 7 rebounds is having an impact, so it wasn't that, whereas we've seen in some games where he's just kind of drifted.
Yeah.
That wasn't the case today. He didn't give them quite enough on offense. And at times, and it's a tall order. He's guarding Lendeborg. He's given up 3 inches.
Yeah. Right.
And he can make up for some of that with the kind of athlete he is, but not all of it. And I think that they, Michigan took advantage at times of a physical mismatch there. But it wasn't a great game from Cohen by any means, but I don't think it was a zero impact game because you don't grab 7 boards and say, well,
right,
he didn't do anything.
Yeah. I mean, he should have had 10. I mean, had that lob from Wojcik, and that would have put up Michigan State up 6. Had just Wojcik just made. It's a pretty bad throw when you can't get it to where Carr can collect it and dunk it. I mean, it was way behind him.
That was kind of a big play because that was in the midst. And I've seen a lot of people popping off about, the Wojcik turn in the second half is what lost them the game. They never recovered. It is true that it started, they were up 4, and by the time Michigan State scored again, Michigan was up 7. So it was an 11-0 run. That's true. But Jeremy was in there for quite a bit of that.
Most of it. Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's a stretch.
Right.
But it was disappointing, and Denham was that play. Obviously you put on him. He just didn't make the play. The other one was the Jordan Scott step out on the sideline where he ended up hitting the shot. Right after he made the move. That was also during that segment when Denham was out there. So he was a little bit snake bit. He also, and I know I gave credit to the officials, and on balance, they deserve it, I think, for this game. What I don't like, though, and this has been a long-standing problem over multiple coaches at Michigan that I've seen, their guards, over the last 10 years at least, get away with forearm push-offs at a rate that I cannot believe.
Yeah.
And Cadeau had one of those on Denham where he just discarded him. and it should have been an offensive foul, in my opinion. But they were letting him get away with it the whole game. He did it a couple times to other people,
Yeah.
and he never got called for it.
And
And you go back, and Simpson did that. Derek Walton did that. It's gross how they get away with it.
Well, and I think, at least with Fears, with his dumb technical, there was definitely some points where he got some contact, but you're just going to not get calls after you do something stupid like that. And that's just kind of the way it goes. And you're not going to get the benefit of the doubt. And I mean, he ended later in the game. Obviously, got plenty of calls.
I don't know that I believe that, because Jeremy does still draw a lot of. I mean, he was living at the foul line.
Yeah, but a couple possessions after that, he was kind of like, there's one when he got kind of mugged under the basket. They didn't call that. Sure. Yeah, which whatever. That's just the game. You can't. The officials didn't decide this game for sure. It was not.
But in any event, getting back to the Denham element of it,
yeah,
Jeremy Fears sat for 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's hardly at all. Yeah,
I can't. And by the way, it's now that we're finally into one and done time. I'm not saying I'm 100% convinced of this, but it's not going to surprise me if we see Jeremy go 40 in a game coming up. It will not. If they need to.
Yeah, not the next games in Chicago.
No.
You're talking about after that.
I want to see it go the
Heaven
other
forbid
way.
that happens.
I want to see him play like 25 minutes.
Yeah.
I think that's a little extreme, but I definitely don't want to see anything above 30. Yeah. And roll Denham Wojcik out there, and what happens, happens.
Yeah.
And I even mean that about Friday, even though I think they kind of need to win. But if they lose it, what's the downside? They're a 3.
I mean, and that's assuming all the other teams are winning, right. And right now they're not. And so, yeah.
Right. So to me, that's what I would do. But I'm talking about the week after, when it really matters.
Yeah. No, I totally hear you.
For real. I think there's a chance we see that. But in this one, I'm sorry. I think I established my bona fides on this in December.
Yes.
Without belaboring the point anymore, I am not in fundamental disagreement about the issues physically, and we saw them tonight. They're physical issues.
Right.
And then one mental error on the play with Carr. But they since Devine went down, they haven't had a choice.
Right.
What do you want them to do? Well, now they're at a point, if they go overboard and they're playing him, 6 minutes, 7 minutes in an NCAA tournament game, okay, then we can have that discussion again. But I also think it's going to be situational. Like if Michigan State gets to near the under 12 and they've got a comfortable working margin, they might well play the Denham card.
For sure.
I just think that it's possible that we could, because the situations are so different with the length of the timeouts, mm-hmm. and the fact that you're playing 2 games in 3 days, assuming you win. But the rest situation is different. I think you can at least contemplate the idea of not pulling him off the floor.
Yeah. Well, and I think,
they haven't had.
When you look at the Big Ten tournament, like it was a 2019 with Cassius Winston, I think Cassius played 28 minutes that first game, maybe 26 in the first round game against Ohio State.
Yeah, and Foster Lawyer let it.
And Foster Lawyer suddenly just started draining threes everywhere. So then they ended up in that collision course with Michigan, and just sort of happened. And so, I mean, that could certainly happen again. But I do think that you'd love to see double digits for Denham on Friday. Whatever happens.
Yep.
But we're getting a little sidetracked from talking about Carr. But let's talk about Kerr Tang then. Kerr had 8 points, 2 for 8 from the field. He just really kept short arming everything from 2. Hit the 2 threes, missed 3 or more. 2 for 3 from line. 2 offensive rebounds. One of them was kind of big. I don't think they ended up scoring off that. Had an assist, had a steal as well, and played 23 minutes. I would say this about defensively. I did not, maybe 1 or 2 that defensive issues, but I didn't see a whole lot that it was real rough with him in there. So at least I think he held his own there. I don't know. Maybe he felt differently.
No, he was okay. I didn't see, there weren't obvious blow-bys or too many situations where he just got out muscled. but there might have been one. I just have in my mind, I have this vague recollection of Trey McKinney taking him to school once, or maybe it would. No, you know what? Maybe it was Roddy Gale. But
Yeah.
But overall, I think the biggest thing to me is they really could have used Kerr making offensive contributions in the second half. They needed it, They needed him to step up and be a shot maker, and they didn't get it. They got it in the first half. They didn't get it in the second. And so that's been the Curtain experience this whole year.
Yep.
It's why I thought it was crazy. Anybody thought after those 2 Indiana games, he's turned the corner now. No. We don't have that track record. And we've seen now, that said, if you're going to tell me that in an NCAA tournament game, he steps up and drops 17 or 18 on somebody, absolutely in the cards. That's the problem.
Right.
The opponent playing Michigan State is you don't know. He's capable of doing that. And that's a nice element for Michigan State to have. It's also true that they're going to be facing some teams, most likely, we would assume, that don't have a lot of familiarity with Michigan State. It's always true that when you're dealing with Big Ten opponents, it's less true now than it used to be because you don't have any double plays and, all that. But it's still true, I think, that the scouting is right up there, the elite levels of the sport. And so teams will take things away. And I think they've generally been more attentive to Kerr than we're likely to see in the NCAA tournament. Now, Michigan really got loose with him in the first half. They were not loose in the second. And that was part of the difference.
Sure. Let's talk about Cam Ward. So he was no points, 0 for 2 from the field, had, 1 rebound, 4 fouls, just played 9 minutes. He definitely looked like a freshman out there. He just was always out of position, just like a step too late on defense and, falling for shot fakes. And he had the one time he went, I guess he went inside like twice to try and was unable. I think he wasn't able to get the layups he's usually able to because, Michigan, they're a good shot blocking team. They had a lot of height and they were defending well.
This is exceptional length, and you look at the way that Cooper and Kohler approached it offensively, and that's how you have to execute. Unfortunately, Cam's, Coop and Jax weren't overpowering Michigan. What they were doing is they were getting good position. They were getting to the spots they wanted to, and then elevating and hitting over them or fading away. Cam doesn't yet have that in his repertoire. He will in time. I'm confident in that. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't have it right now. Yeah, it's a shame because he's been playing really well lately. And so he was probably due for one of these. And just in general, Michigan State all year, I think, has gotten more out of their 2 freshmen than probably most people anticipated on balance.
Yep.
But they didn't get that today.
Right. Yeah. That's a good summary. Boy, a lot of Michigan front-runner fans out in the comments today. We'll skip Dunborchik since we talked about him quite a bit already.
In all seriousness, for anybody who's listening to this and is a Michigan,
there are quite a few.
You don't care about the sport. Why would I take you seriously? Your team played a good game today. Great. You don't care. You don't fill your building. You're kind of a kind of entity when it comes to college basketball. That's the truth. I know it's hard to accept, but it's the truth. The greatest season you've ever had, ever, in a regular season, and more people watched Michigan State this year on television than watched Michigan. Those are the ratings. Those are the numbers. I didn't make them up. More people see Michigan State play live than see Michigan play live. I know that's a fact because that's been a fact for eternity.
Yeah.
So enjoy your win. We'll see what happens because now it's all set up that the only way this is a success in the end is if you win it all. That's it. Anything else is a failure.
Yeah.
So enjoy that. Hold that when the L comes.
Well, for Michigan, at least when it comes to Big Ten tournament, I would think it's not. Now, they may just be so overwhelming that they're going to win 3 games and, walk away with the title. I don't know, for the Big Ten tournament, but for a team that you definitely saw a little bit of problems with rotation for them as well, with the loss of Kason, that they're much better off, as you mentioned before, just folding it up on Saturday. You've got the number 1 seed anyway. You're going to, whether you have the overall number 1 seed or not, makes no difference what happens on Saturday or Sunday. So
that's absolutely,
whatever.
That's absolutely true. And the smart move would be for them to, the problem is I guess they don't have enough guys that they can really do that, and just kind of fold the tent. But, in all honesty, this one, you can make an argument their bench was extremely important.
Oh yeah. But that's, that's a home. That is a not uncommon thing to happen at home, right? Role players come up and they have big games on the road.
And I will
you
say
see that
this.
Michigan State too. And, so
I'll say this. I thought, we talked about one issue potentially is what happens to them when they get a bad game from Elliot Cadeau, because Kason's shooting of late had really been saving them. Well, they got that kind of shooting performance out of Trey McKinney today.
Right.
I thought the second half he was massive.
Yeah,
his 2 threes were huge. And they really did. I mean, Cadeau played 33 minutes. He had 2 points, 1 of 5 from the floor, 0 for 2 from 3, didn't shoot a free throw, had 2 assists, 3 turnovers. So they got a stink bomb game from Cadeau.
Mm-hmm.
And they still managed to win it because they got enough out of McKinney and they got enough out of Gale. Great. Do it again.
Yeah.
Do it again. Do it again.
And then finally, Jesse McCullough made the floor. He was on a DNP today, just because of early foul trouble for Michigan State for the Coop and Kohler. Each got a foul within, I think, both of them within the first 4 or 5 minutes. He came out, played a minute, and then Ward, and I think Ward also picked up like 2 fouls quick too. So he came in, did a little bit
in foul trouble the whole game.
Yeah, he just never really looked.
It was part of why it was a big part of why he never got on track.
Yeah. And so my point is, and someone asked why second best year in history, why intentionally lose? I would never tell anyone. There's no way anyone intentionally loses, but I think, just the amount of effort and the intensity with which you want to get the win, because, you can rest starters more than other times. Like, again, Rod and I have both saying, we don't want to see a ton of minutes from Jeremy Fears in the Big Ten tournament.
Well,
because just doesn't matter. I don't want to see him play 40 minutes or even 37.
The situations are a little different in that nobody's talking about Cadeau ever needing to go 40.
Right. Well, that's true.
Michigan State, so they are different.
But Yaks are playing, 37. You don't want to play that much.
I mean, but I generally feel this way, and Michigan State's won more of these things than anybody.
Right.
So I think we're entitled to have let's call it an educated opinion about this, since our school has won more than anybody else in that event. I don't think it's ever worth maxing out to win that thing, unless your NCAA tournament lives depend on it.
Sure. If there's some reason.
Game, like, we're talking about Friday with Michigan State. It seems, if you believe the general bracketology word out there, Michigan State could sew up a 2 seed by winning on Friday. So that's you certainly want to win that game if you can. And I'm actually pretty happy with how that's played out. We can talk about that in a bit, but in terms of who Michigan State might well play in that game. But I don't want to see Michigan State playing Jeremy Fears 37 minutes to get that win. No way.
Yeah.
Every minute, just look. All you've got to do is look around college basketball in the last several days. Now, it didn't happen in a game. It happened in practice, but North Carolina loses Wilson. And with that, I think any hope of a deep run.
Oh, yeah.
Done. Off the table. A couple weeks before that, Texas Tech lost Toppin. Done. They're not making a deep run, in my opinion. The big one is what happened to Duke, where it looks like Caleb Foster's done, and their big kid,
Gombo or something like that.
Yeah. He was in a boot. Now, they don't seem to be talking about him as being off the table. to get back. But the loss of Foster alone is a big one.
Yep.
That can happen. Yeah, it can happen in practice too. But realistically, I think we find I would love, it's just occurred to me, I would love to see data on this, but just anecdotally, it seems like we more frequently see injuries, serious ones, happen in game action as opposed to practice. Stands to reason that's how it would play out, because you might not be going full tilt at all times in practice.
Well, and it's
you
not
are
20, not 2 and a whole hour or 40 minutes of it, like, right. Like actually banging it. Yeah, for sure.
So that's all part of the equation, right? If you're Michigan, you've got to feel like, look, we're already down one guy. I mean, seriously, what happens if Cadeau gets hurt? What happens?
Yeah.
They're done. They're not winning it. As much as I'm sketchy on Cadeau, they're not winning it without him. I don't believe they'd have a shot in hell. So every minute you play in what amounts to an exhibition game, which is what the Big Ten tournament is a risk. It's a risk in terms of, energy depletion. It's just unnecessary. Now you can debate how big of one it is on that front, but you can't debate that it's some. It's extra wear and tear on the tires. Why? And maybe more seriously, every minute you're playing in a meaningless game, you're running the risk that somebody gets hurt. It's the same rationale as, why is a guy who's important to you out there on the court in the last 2 minutes of a blowout? It's exactly the same thing.
Yes.
There's no good reason for it.
Yes.
Well, right. If you've somehow deluded yourself into believing that the Big Ten tournament matters, hey, go for it. I'd be happy to see Michigan try to max out in this thing, because I think it's dumb. And I think it will run unnecessary risks that maybe they beat, but maybe they don't. So I'd love to see them roll the dice on that. Go ahead.
Yeah, someone just mentioned Michigan could win the Triple Crown. I'm like, I didn't even realize that would be a crown, which is kind of funny.
Nobody considers that.
Well, someone does.
Nobody.
Nobody. One commenter thinks it is a Triple Crown. I will only say, just a reminder to people who are Michigan State fans, of course, is it wasn't that long ago that Michigan State lost a real important piece of their tournament run, Kyle Arns, in the Big Ten tournament, I think in the championship game, if I recall.
That's right.
Where he fell on his back and hurt his back. And I tell you what, that was, I mean, again, you can't blame them not making as far as you would have thought, but he was a huge part, especially down the stretch for that team from a shooting and
he was a rotation. He was a solid rotation guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly an injury equivalent to, in its way to what they've had with Ugochukwu or Michigan had with Kason. He was a guy who was playing double-digit minutes for your team, and you lose him. So you're down one. Now, I think in that case, that was an easier one for Michigan State to work around because of what it impacted positionally. They were okay, but it's a bigger deal when it's at a position like point guard, which both Michigan and Michigan State are facing. That's where really you can't get more damaging than that.
Well, of course. Yeah.
On a basketball court, you can't.
Yeah. I mean, there aren't any teams really that can sustain an injury to a starter very easily this late in the season, because it's just going to mess things up. Or even a key reserve
at that, especially at the point.
Yeah, no question. All right. Well, and there's not much. I don't think there's much more to talk about Jesse. He was barely in 1 minute, and
really didn't have
not real impactful.
I thought they might. But honestly, what probably took more minutes off the table might have been, and I'm just saying might, that Mara was in foul.
I was going to say, when Mara left,
the one
he didn't
guy
need him.
You'd say, well, he's going to give up looks on the perimeter because he can't move.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think when Mara got that second foul, went to the bench, they said, well, we don't need Jesse out right now. And they never really needed him again, because at that point, they were no longer in foul trouble in the second half because everyone's under control.
Right. And at the points that Mara was back in the game, you weren't going to play around.
No. And also you had Kohler and Cooper had, 2 fouls each or something like that. It was not really an issue. It looked like it could have gotten weird. And then
early
at a flip,
more dangerous.
You suddenly have the interior for Michigan having some foul trouble, and they of course managed that as well. So, all right. Well, let's talk about gutters, Rod. You know, if you are in Michigan, whether you're a Michigan fan or Michigan State fan, this is your opportunity. You guys who are coming and joining us here, head on over to our support page at the Final Four is on the schedule.com/support. There you can get great service on gutters, 10% off your gutter work. We all know this is super important to be in the state of Michigan. Rain is coming. Spring is around the corner, and you want to make sure those gutters are functioning properly. Make sure your downspouts work okay. The leaves aren't clogged in there. Maybe have the brothers come out. They can put the leaf guards on. They're not going to try and upsell you. They're not going to try and sell you other stuff. They just focus on gutters. They take care of Rod's house. They take in my house. They just do fantastic work. They'll get on the ladder so you don't have to. So you don't have to clean that freezing water out of there with your hands and all the muck and stuff. And I mean, I had a tree growing in my gutter. So make sure you don't have those sorts of problems. Contact the brothers to adjust your gutters today. Kurt and Greg will take great care of you. 10% off simply by mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate from those guys. Do it today. You'd be very glad you did. So the player that Michigan State had to keep in the gutter was Yaxel Lendeborg. 27 points, 8 for 12 shooting, 5 for 6 from 3, perfect 6 for 6 from line, only 3 rebounds, I guess you could say, none offensive, 3 assists, no turnovers, a steal and a block. He was really good. I mean, I guess he had 16 in the first half, or even more than that.
19.
Yeah, maybe he ended up with 19. I think they showed 16 at one point, but I think he ended up with, I think you're right, he ended up with 19. Most of his damage early in the first half, but either way, he was offensively, he was very good, and he was sort of his disruptive self on defense. I mean, so he was the best, but and he's almost certain now, especially after this game. Not that there's probably much doubt he will be the player of the year for the Big Ten.
Probably so. I mean, that was you were seeing a lot of arguments for 3 different guys, and I don't think the game Jeremy Fears played did his candidacy any damage, but I think you're right. I think that Lendeborg played this well in this game in a race that most people believed was fairly close between those two and Keaton Wagler. I didn't even see what Wagler did today, but I know they struggled with a really bad Maryland team. So
yeah, he had no points at halftime. So I know we were listening to the game, and he only had maybe. But he did some stuff in the second half.
I felt he was the third man in the ring.
Yeah.
Anyway. And so you would assume that Lendeborg is gonna win that, and deservedly so.
Yeah, for sure.
He had a great game. I find him highly unlikable as a kid. Some of the things he said, the way he's behaved himself, it's punk behavior. But very good player. And more to the point, and why I can respect it, he is, and this is what I would say about Jeremy too. So what would frustrate me over the last few weeks about discussions where it would say, who's the best point guard in the Big Ten? And they'd bring up guys like Braden Smith and
Bennett Sturts and Thornton.
Yeah. No, the game's played at 2 ends, guys. 2 ends. Jeremy Fears plays it at 2 ends. He's as good as those guys offensively, but he's way better defensively.
Mm-hmm.
Lendeborg is a total impact player. He hasn't always been the consistent kind of scorer I think people expected him to be. His point totals are not spectacular, but he's certainly capable of having, as we saw today, individual games where he goes on a heater and you wonder, why isn't this guy scoring 20 points a night? But he's been good there. But I think what makes him a worthy winner is that he's been outstanding defensively. I mean, people talked about him as a very good defensive player transferring in from UAB. I got to be honest, I did not expect that he would do in totality the things that he has done, because he wasn't really asked to do those things at UAB. The fact that he's been able to defend perimeter players at the level he has, that was news to me. And yet still be able to block shots, still be able to hold up on the interior when he's asked to do that. He's been a good passer. They never really used him the way I thought they might. I thought they might mimic some of the stuff they did with Danny Wolf last year, and it never really happened. But he still made an impact as a playmaker. So I can't argue with him winning that award. And today, certainly, Michigan State didn't put him anywhere close to the gutter.
Yeah, no question. Well, let's move from gutters to windows and the glass. And the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids, they can take care of all your window cleaning needs, whether it's your home, your business, maybe it's a high rise you own or your landlord. They'll also come out and power wash. They'll do all those things even right now in the spring. Well, there's actually probably a good time to get all that grime off the side of your windows and to get it off the side of your house. So contact the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. They'll get on the ladder so you don't have to. And let's be honest, no one likes power washing when it's like 45 degrees out, but these guys will do it. And they'll also come inside. They're the nicest guys. They took care of our windows not too long ago. They will come inside. They'll clean all the blinds. They'll clean the screens. Our windows actually never looked better than in the 20 years I've been in my home. So contact the Squeegee Squad today. Even if you're not in Grand Rapids, if you're anywhere remotely close to Grand Rapids, if you feel like you can get to drive there within 2 hours, give them a call. You'll be glad you did. You get 15% off simply by mentioning Final Four. When you get your estimate, you can find a way to do that at our support page, of course, at tffinots.com/support. Do that today. You'll be very glad you did. They'll take care of things. So in the Who Cleans the Glass Best contest, it was 15-12. I get to pick Kohler first. And so, of course, Kohler did not have the best rebounding game. He had 8 boards.
Okay. He didn't lose it for you.
No, he didn't, but he didn't get it. He didn't dominate as much as I needed him to. Ward with 1, Coop with 6, and Carr with 7. So you finish running away. You win by 4 games, 16-12. I will be wearing the basketball on my head probably when I'm for the Big Ten tournament preview, whenever we find out who Michigan State is playing.
You're going to bring that thing on the road with you?
Well, it's the only solution I can come up with. It's the only. Well, it's appropriate for a child's party, right? With a sack race.
I guess you know what? Right? That's a really good point. You're absolutely right. And if you combined it with some giant shoes and a big red nose, you'd really be onto something.
Well,
treating the event with the respect it deserves.
I will say I really enjoy sack races. They're kind of fun. So
they can be, sure.
Yeah.
I'm not anti-sack race. I just believe in calling things what they are.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I'll bring that along. And for our audio listeners, I think it is, I will try and figure out a way of doing the helium as well, just so you have we get the full onset and display of humiliation. Because I think it's only fair, since I've lost 2 years in a row now. I mean, I think probably about the same score. I think it was about this score before. I think I lost, but
we're establishing a tradition.
Yeah. A tradition like none other, not the Masters. All right. Well, one great tradition that you should have for you and your family is to make sure that you find the highest quality, best Spartan apparel. And you can do that, of course, at Nudge Printing at nudgeprinting.com. You can head over right now to nudgeprinting.com/win. And there you can enter for a free Sparty golfing mesh hat. They're super cool. They've got a little tartan green on the inside. Check it out. You can go to nudgeprinting.com/win. The entry is free. Of course, Nudge Printing provides all our prizes and I will calculator for the Beat Rod contest. We'll have to see how you did, Rod. What do you think? Do you think you won this year? I don't think so.
Oh, I don't think I won. No, but I also...
Are you top half? You haven't ever been top half. You might be the top 50% this time. I don't know.
I'm not, here's the thing that I don't like about this. I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second here. Besides the fact that I have to make these picks earlier than other people do. For example, I'm not going to get credit for picking Michigan State second, am I?
Oh, I'll give you credit for that.
No, I'm saying third, in this.
Right. It'll be this. Right.
No, but I'm saying I don't get points for that, right?
Well,
whereas in the standings, they did actually tie for second.
Well, I mean, you're splitting hairs now. This is kind of ridiculous. This is a bit ridiculous. I'm also not getting, you don't get like penalized for teams that are, you may, just because other teams get tied, they might be higher up in the standings. If they're tied for, say, 7th place, they're not all 7th. One might actually be 5th place, or one might be 9th or 10th. And so you don't get penalized there. So it works both ways.
I honestly, wherever I finished, I don't feel horribly given the difficulty of the challenge these days, because I do feel like I directionally got a lot right. Now, did I miss with Nebraska? Yep. Me and everybody else in the world.
Well, but you know what? I will give you credit. You got Washington right. I mean, I think
that's what I was going to say.
They were worse than I think you predicted, but they were still not nearly the juggernaut that people thought.
I got most of the, the problem was I had Nebraska in that bottom group and they shouldn't have been.
Right.
Whereas I didn't have Oregon there and they should have been, or Maryland for that matter.
Right.
But I think I got, I figured Indiana and Iowa were going to be kind of bubbly teams, and that's what they are. Ohio State, kind of the same thing. I mean, I feel, didn't have Michigan winning it, but I had them third. It's not like I had them buried. I think I might have gotten Illinois on the money. Did I have Illinois fourth?
I am not sure.
I might
maybe
have.
Yeah. So, I sent the we'll just talk about this for a second. So I said you had Illinois sixth, actually.
I did?
Yep.
Who did I have fifth and fourth?
UCLA fourth and Wisconsin fifth. And so Wisconsin, you got right.
That's not a huge miss, I guess. I don't know what I must have been on drugs. Well, here's what it was. I know what my rationale must have been is that I believe Dent would be a much bigger impact guy than he was.
Well, a lot of people
did.
I
wasn't entirely buying into Illinois' balkanization move, and it ended up being better than I expected a little bit. But I'm not way off in those.
I sent somebody that was a college basketball report, and this was pretty much consensus a lot of times back in October.
Oh, well, that was October. That was awful. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Michigan State
I'm just going to go through. Yeah. So they had Purdue as the juggernaut, which
everybody
really didn't end up. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They had Michigan, UCLA, and Illinois as contenders. And I think, Illinois and Michigan, obviously correct.
Right.
UCLA was off. Tournament teams, Washington, Ohio State, Oregon, Southern Cal, and Iowa. They got two of those, and Iowa's kind of like fringy right now. Fringe tournament teams, Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan State, Maryland, Nebraska. I mean, obviously Nebraska, they missed in that, but like you said, everyone did. They were way underrated. Michigan State, who's going to end up probably a 2 or at worst, maybe a 3 seed. Indiana's, they were fringy, but Wisconsin probably solidly in. Below average, Minnesota and Northwestern. And I think that's largely accurate, although Minnesota's sort of on the upside. And Rutgers and of course, they totally missed Maryland, and then Rutgers and Penn State at the bottom. Which
Rutgers has really surprised everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, they won 6 games in the league because they won today, I think.
Yeah, they easily pounded Penn State.
That's remarkable with the team that they've got.
Right,
won 6 games. That might actually be, and I never thought I'd be saying this, but this might be as good a coaching job as Steve Peichel's done to get that team to win 6 games.
Right,
that really, and to have had games, both of the games against Michigan State.
Yeah, competitive.
That, and I haven't looked through their schedule to see if there were others that they might have been able to get, but geez, they might have been able, they might have been in there where if everything had really broken well for them, they might have been able to win 8 or 9. They were never going to be a tournament team no matter what, but pretty remarkable that they managed to win 6 with that kind of material.
Well, and I will point out, and I think we've talked about this before, the bottom of the Big Ten has been pretty awful. And yes. I feel like that's contributed a lot to Rutgers wins. So you can just be less really awful than the other teams. And you can be really, really terrible against the good teams, and which they largely were, except against Michigan State. They played them well. They, shot well against Michigan State, but against the rest of the Big Ten, they were just truly dreadful. And so anyway, that's, neither here nor there. So let's talk about the keys of the game, which I totally have wrong. I will fix that right now. So the first key of the game was a poise. And I think that is one that largely was the case for Jeremy Fears, where he was not poised early in the game. And then he sort of pulled it together and he became poised later on.
On balance, I don't have a problem with it. Yeah, there was the one moment where he lost it. It was poor decision. Can't happen. It immediately, the other thing it did is it put him on the precipice, because that happened with
early.
God, were there like 14 minutes left in the first half? It happened early.
Yeah, I think
that
so.
Could have put him, they could have paid a big price for that. If he had gotten a second foul, that would have been major. Major.
Can I ask you a question too about that?
Yeah.
So Mara gets 2 technical fouls, correct?
No. If you're asking why wasn't he ejected?
Yeah, I thought that did he not have 2
one
technicals?
Of them, one
oh, is that
them,
just a comment foul, the one where he grabbed him?
You get thrown out if you have 2 flagrant ones, is my understanding.
Oh, I thought he had 2 flagrant ones.
No.
I thought the push on Coop was a
that was called a technical.
Right.
And the second one,
so that's not a foul flagrant.
I assume because it was dead ball, I guess. That would be my assumption as to why, because the ball had gone through the bucket. It was after the basket had been scored, just after, but it was after the basket had been scored. So I think that was the distinction. Yeah, I know a lot of people were confused by that, but I believe that's the answer, is one was a T and one was an F1. And if they had both been F1s, he's tossed.
I guess that's a distinction that I'm just not familiar with, but whatever.
Well, it doesn't come up very much,
like pointing at the scoreboard and getting technical. That sort of thing.
Right. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah. Right. So overall, I think poise, Michigan State, as you mentioned before, they're better.
I don't feel they lost, barring that momentary lapse in judgment from Jeremy. I think they handled themselves pretty well. I thought they were clearly much, much, much better in that regard than they were in the first one. They got off to a 5-0 lead. They were, as we talked about, this game was, other than a couple of brief moments that didn't last more than a few seconds, this was a game that was played both ways, kind of in a 2-possession-ish range for 80-90% of the game.
Most of it was close. Yeah.
Almost all of it.
Yeah.
And so that's a sign that, and I thought Michigan State also demonstrated it in moments where it might have felt like you mentioned, that moment in the first half where they got up 9. Michigan State answers immediately. And I mean, within 5 seconds, 6 seconds, they answer. There were other moments in this game. For as much as Michigan did, I felt, a great job of answering Michigan State. When Michigan State would score a big bucket to either cut the lead down, or in the few occasions where they actually had a lead, Michigan did a great job of answering those moments. They didn't let things linger or spiral, but Michigan State largely did the same for their part. So I thought overall they handled it well.
So the second key of the game was, of course, the boards. This is where you said, Michigan State fell down. So overall rebounding, Michigan led 35-32. Michigan State with 10 offensive boards, which was a 27% offensive rebounding rate, much below average.
It's graceful.
Michigan with 8 offensive rebounds, which gave them a 29%, so not much better. Second chance points, Michigan State's 10 offensive rebounds, they turned into 9 points. Michigan's 8, they turned into 11 points. So pretty much a push there, but that's one where you certainly would have expected and hoped that Michigan State would have a little advantage.
I said it. That's why it was one of the keys. It was hard for me to envision Michigan State winning this game if they didn't need to have like an 18% edge.
Right.
But it needed to be an edge. It needed to be a real edge. And it wasn't. They actually lost it narrowly. I don't think it was lack of effort. I don't think it was lack of toughness. They just, as I said, they didn't win those duels, so to speak. And that'll cost you. Against a good opponent, that will cost you.
So the next was the transition game, which Michigan State was averaging, what we think was about 3.5 points more than Michigan. And they finished with 11, Michigan with 7. So pretty close. Although this is one of those things that Michigan State had a little bit more, because they had a couple that were like those secondary breaks where they get some deep penetration. But either way, I mean, they had an edge here.
That number didn't act. I thought Michigan State did a pretty good job of pushing the ball in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They didn't get a ton out of it in terms of point production, but I wasn't unhappy with. And here's what they did well: their defense against it was better than in the first game. They weren't giving up. Michigan had one of those stupid Mara baseball passes on a run out. We spent some time talking about that.
Right,
I think
exactly.
Got one, and it came pretty late in the game. So they were better at shutting that shit down.
Yeah. So then when we have fourth key to the game was turnovers. This was an edge for Michigan State, 14 for Michigan. They had scored 7 points off Michigan. So 14 turnovers.
They only had 10.
Oh, 10.
They had 10.
Okay. All right.
Michigan State had 7. It was an edge, but it wasn't. The way I would describe it is Michigan State did exactly what they needed to do. 7 turnovers is a great performance, right?
Yep.
But you would have hoped, because Michigan's been right down there with Michigan State in terms of having problems here. And they were coming off an 18 turnover game in Iowa City. You would have hoped for more. And especially on a day, I mean, Cadeau played a lot of minutes, but on a day where he was actually struggling, you would hope that that would have impacted them more than it did. And it really didn't. I don't know, what was the difference in points off turnovers?
14-8 edge for Michigan. So 6-point edge.
Wow. Despite the fact that they had 3 more turnovers.
Yep. They turned 7 turnovers into 14 points.
That's impressive. That's big. That's big. Yeah. Anytime you're averaging a bucket per opponent turnover, but yet at the same time, I don't know. I'd have to go back and rewatch, which I'm never going to do. But
we don't have to.
It didn't feel like there were, a ton of turnovers for touchdowns.
And we've seen this before, where there's
kind of a freak thing.
Well, you just happen to score after a dead ball turnover. I mean, I'm sure they scored after Jordan Scott stepped out of bounds. Well, is that a point of turnover? I guess, but it's not like. Yeah. All right. So the final key to the game was, of course, the foul line, and here Michigan was really good. I mean, although I would say both teams are good from the foul line, and Michigan was 10 for 20, or sorry, wrong way, 26 for 29. Now, a lot of that was boosted by the end of the game, sort of, Michigan State trying to get back in the game. Michigan State was 16 for 20, so both teams shot very well from the line. I think probably they, from a foul standpoint, they're probably very basically equivalent. There wasn't much difference there.
I think that what I was really concerned about was that Michigan not have a decisive advantage in the foul department in getting opportunities. Early on, it kind of felt like they seemed to be getting to the line at a good clip in the first half early in that game, where Michigan State wasn't. But that slowed down. And they had an advantage, but the reason the advantage they had was, you're right, it was the fouling at the end. Overall, I did not feel that it was a decisive edge for them in terms of the way the game played out.
Right. Yeah, exactly. All right. So one of the decisive things, make sure you go to Fanduel if you need to make a decision as far as where to go do your sports betting. There's no better place to go than Fanduel. You can head on over and grab the app on your phone. They'll also toss in 100% what you toss in to a certain extent. I can't remember the exact deal, but they'll double your money to start with and get you going. You can get any sort of line you want, whether it's a championship bet or just an individual game. Again, you can all do it all on the Fanduel app. Who do you have as a Fanduel player of the game for Michigan State?
I would say Jackson Kohler.
Okay. Yep. And we had a split between Kohler, Cooper, and Fears. So
that's all fair.
I think those are the 3 good players. Yeah. Yeah. I think so too. I think it was pretty reasonable. I just have to mention, so we're going to, before we wrap up here, Graham Couch with a really funny quote. So apparently, and I don't know, I've not watched the post game, but Izzo had a little dig, sort of describe the environment. He says it's a pretty good environment for here, referring to Chrysler. And one of our listeners here, Spartan MD 8295, said he was at the game. Lifeless crowd. I mean, I don't know. It didn't seem, I don't know. It's hard sometimes getting through the television to get a feel for what exactly is going, because different broadcasts sort of have different, I guess, feels for what the crowd noise. And I think it's a Peacock, one of those channels. I feel like I can never hear the announcers because they almost have too much crowd noise pumped in. But and then he said also, and this is a very reliable person, so I would just add that too, but just that it was not full, the arena, which I find amazing. I know you said that, but I still find it stunning that you can have this kind of seats and this kind of team, a rivalry game, and you can't sell it. I suppose it's because Michigan State fans were sort of had not as many designs and showing up to this game too, maybe.
I'm sorry, I missed some of that. Did you say that Graham Couch was saying it wasn't filled?
No, one of our listeners here, he said he described the crowd as lifeless, but
it kind of came across that way on television.
But sometimes you can't tell is what I'm saying. Yeah,
it's true, but compare it to what the atmosphere was at Breslin, what came through the television, and there's a difference. Yeah. But again, that's no surprise. That's what they are.
No, I know.
They're not a basketball school. That's it. There's no more debate. It's fact.
Right. It's just surprising. So as we look at the, let's see, I'm trying to get the last. So the Big Ten tournament seeding, not that we care a ton, but so it's interesting because Michigan State is now, these are the teams in Michigan State's region: Rutgers, Minnesota, and UCLA. So those, one of those three teams will be there.
I'm a big Bruin fan. I'm a big Bruin fan. But I'll tell you why. It's not just that, Michigan State struggled more. They lost to Minnesota and they could have lost twice to Rutgers, whereas they pounded UCLA. It's not just that. It's funny that I'm saying this about a UCLA Mick Cronin team, but it's the style of play. What I know is either Minnesota or Rutgers are going to play extremely hard.
Yep.
And they're going to be very physical, both of those teams. I don't want that. Win, lose, or draw, I don't want that for Michigan from a Michigan State perspective. So it goes contrary to what you would normally be thinking in a tournament where you want the upset, so you play a perceived to be weaker team. But in this case, give me UCLA. And that's why I wasn't unhappy that Nebraska came back and won that game in overtime today against Iowa. Because for as bad as Purdue has been, I know, I refuse to believe that Purdue does not have one great game left in them. This year. I mean, and so I don't believe that about UCLA. I think UCLA is fine. Michigan State could certainly lose to them. Yeah. That's not off the table, but I just give me UCLA. So I'm very happy. And again, that runs counter. You'd normally rather have the 7 than the 6, right? Not in this case, not from my perspective, at least.
It'll be fun. I get to watch an Indiana-Purdue game in the second round, or probably Indiana, assuming they beat Northwestern Penn State, which I guess you can't assume anything in the Big Ten tournament. If there's one thing that I know about the Big Ten tournament, you really have no idea what's going to happen.
Northwestern's already beaten Indiana once.
Yeah, I know. I understand. Yeah, Nick Martinelli. I mean, they're in the home. They're Chicago's team, right?
But Indiana really. I mean, I think the odds of them making the field are very, very low at this point. Yeah. But they're not zero. Right. And so if they made a run like to the semis or the finals, might that be enough? Yeah, maybe. So you would think they're going to have motivation.
Yeah. But of course they've been motivated for a couple of games and they've not really
delivered true.
Either, so
that's true. But
you're right. You just have to rise up for 2 days in a row or 3 days in a row.
Well, let's put it this way. You would think the odds are better that they play kind of with their hair on fire than it would be if they were, say, considered to be safely in the field as like an 8 or a 9 seed.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I encourage everyone. Thanks for stopping in. We'll, of course, be back, I think.
And thanks to the Michigan fans for stopping by because you made us money.
Yeah. Monetize 8.
That's a fact. Thank you.
We appreciate it. We love you all. And whether you're a Michigan Wolverine or you're a Spartan, you can visit all our sponsors. Head on over to our support page at tffinots.com/support. There you can reach the Brothers Adjust You Gutters, Nudge Printing, Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids, or Fanduel. I can't imagine many people are going to, if you're a Michigan fan, going to find much at Nudge that you're going to want. But there are other teams you can get. That's maybe true. Like, maybe you got an Akron fan, maybe you went to school at Western or something. You can get something like that.
Oh, there's a lot of those.
Yeah. So
anyway, the house on that.
so until next time,
buy the merchandise from the school you actually went to, Michigan fan.
Until next time, the Final Four is on the schedule. Go Green.